Section 336, Matt, Josh, and Bert are at the games hidden behind home plate. Let's go O's! Section 336.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Baltimore sports fans of all ages, welcome to Section 336, next generation of Baltimore sports talk. I'm your dearly stunning host, Matt Soroka. As always, I'm joined by the zany Bert Rohde.
What up, 336ers?
Yeah, and just like Luis Ortiz, Bert has lost 10 pounds just to start this, get ready for this new season.
I'm looking trim and thin and
how
ready
you
to
feeling?
win.
Yeah. And Josh, how's your finger doing with those buttons? Are you feeling good? I know it's early, but are you feeling good?
I'm all good. I'm
Okay.
more concerned that Bert's wearing an extra 10 pounds with a sweatshirt, a jacket.
I'm chilly,
You a
man.
little cold?
I was shivering coming in here.
I was going to say, I even put the heater down here and had it running ahead of time to try to help out.
I'll strip off some layers if I start to get warm. For right now, I'm chilly.
And we're also joined by another guest. This is second straight week for Section 336 with the
All
guest.
right.
Yeah, I think it might be 3 out of 4.
And this is an upgrade. We got the voice of the Bowie Baysox, Adam Pohl. Adam Pohl, welcome to Section 336.
Thank you so much. And Bert, I'm enjoying the sight of your ribs.
Oh, thank you. This jacket is almost like a catcher's chest protector. That's why I like wearing it.
Let's see how well it works.
Yeah, I always laugh, and I mean it is what it is. But like Hunter Harvey and Nate Carnes pitched today, and I know they're coming off injuries and whatever.
Right.
But like all the quotes of throwing bat in practice and saying you feel good.
Yep.
You better feel good after just throwing bat in practice, right? But it's like that's all the running quotes. Everyone feels good. Feel good. Feel good.
What else
feel
do you
good.
want him to say?
Yeah, no, it is what it is.
Had a rough outing. They hit the ball constantly.
Adam, you're a new father. I wanted
Yes.
to throw out a congratulations there. That's exciting. Has your life completely changed since the arrival of said baby?
Yeah, I've learned a lot. There's no doubt about it because it's my first. Her name's Alexandra. She's sleeping pretty well.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, she really is. She slept actually through the night last night, which
Oh,
is
my
the second
goodness.
time she did that.
Yeah.
So everything's going great, and we're excited.
Yeah, that's exciting. I'm on baby watch, guys.
Yes, he is. Here we go.
I gotta tell you what. Now my wife doesn't listen to this podcast, so I can say anything really, but I'm going to be nice here. But I got to be honest. I am glad to be out of the house. It's a little bit stressful now,
Sure.
because my wife was due to have a baby on Friday, and so she can literally go at any moment. And so now, whenever I'm home, I just find myself staring at her, like waiting for something to happen.
Like, don't
And
poke.
don't
Pop the balloon.
And this has been going on for like 2 weeks, where I
Right.
just spend every
Right.
minute at home just staring at her, and every like movement that she makes, or like grunt she makes. What was
Yeah.
that? Is that it? Is that it?
Now,
So it's a little bit stressful. So I'm glad to get out of the
All right.
house for a second and talk baseball.
Now, Matt, I didn't
Yeah.
mention this to you pre-show,
That's fine.
but the problem with having the same parents is I get stories from mom and dad about you.
I don't want to talk about it. I know where you're going,
All right.
and I don't want to talk about
All right, then we won't go there.
it. Yeah. My house is broken into.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you about.
Yeah. My house is
Oh,
broken
so we
into.
are going there.
Yeah. It could have been a lot worse, though. But here's a weird thing, right? My house is broken into, and they stole some jewelry.
Right.
And they stole
Define
some
broken.
money. Well,
They turned the handle and walked in.
we're a little old fashioned. We let all the doors run locked. All right. I've never locked my door like in my entire life.
But your butler
Yeah.
wasn't there to help out?
No, the cat was, and I don't know what the cat was doing this whole time. And we got goats back out
That's
back.
my question
I mean,
is
it's a
the goats.
farmhouse. I didn't think
They
they were
were
breaking this little farmhouse.
Matt.
I was in my house for an hour before my wife got home. And my wife got home and she was like, Matt, why is the TV off kilter? Like someone tried to rip it off the wall. Why is all the furniture moved around? And
Right.
I was home for an
It's
hour.
not baseball season, so you're not frustrated.
I was upstairs playing MLB The Show, trying to get the Orioles to the World Series for an hour. I had no idea someone had broken into our house.
Well, MLB The Show has made you frustrated enough to try to pull the TV down and kick all the furniture. So
But no, yeah. So I mean, it was kind of fortunate that they were clearly in a hurry because they missed a lot of opportunities to take a lot more stuff.
Right.
They just stole some jewelry and I got a big old jar of change, like, and they stole the big old jar of
probably
change.
threw his
and
back
they-
out carrying that.
Yeah, well, we lock our doors now. We lock our
That's
doors.
good.
We lock our doors. Yeah, that was a little
Yeah,
unfortunate.
door lock's a pretty nice invention.
It is
Yeah,
unfortunate.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not even like I don't even need a key because we got the little
All
punch
right,
code.
That was my question
Yeah.
for you: is how soon you lose the key and get locked out of your
Well,
house?
we have the punch code.
right.
But yeah, how soon do I do? I know you guys do all the
Ring cams.
the ring cams.
Yeah.
I
Might
might
be
have to get
time.
there eventually. Adam, you're a ring cam guy. Can you
No,
see who's going to
no,
your house?
I'm not.
That feels a little bit much to me. I feel like that's crossing a line that I'm not comfortable going with, where I'm actually watching people who arrive to my house.
I've got 6 Ring cameras.
I know.
around my home.
You're all. Someone gets within 100 yards of Bert's house.
No way.
He's still noticed.
I like my seclusion. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I mean, if someone's going to break into my house when I'm not home, I probably don't even want to know about it.
That's the weird part is Matt has all the seclusion.
Yeah, I know. But maybe that's why too. I'm more susceptible because I don't live in your.
I got a fair amount of seclusion. If somebody comes walking down my driveway, they're not supposed to be there.
As long as there's not a big party.
Yeah, well, even we can have a big party and it doesn't disturb anybody. We were very fortunate. I'm sorry to hear about all that, Matt. Though
that's all right. It's just a lot going on right now.
That's unsettling.
It's just a lot going on right now, right?
Yeah.
And with the baby doing his second.
Emily's got to be a joy to be around right now.
And you know, well, the thing, and Emily is she's a trooper. She's fantastic. But the thing that drives you crazy about the baby ready to go at any moment, like she thought maybe like last Monday something was going to happen because I don't know.
So now she's just expecting it every day,
feeling the twinge.
And I don't understand this. Like either you're having contractions or not. I don't want to offend. Like what is it? Come on. But whatever. But the thing, you know what's weird? There's a book by Franz Kafka called Metamorphosis about a guy who turns into a bug, right? Mm-hmm. And so overnight he transforms into a bug.
All right.
And the next day he wakes up and his first thought is, "Oh crap, I'm a bug. This means I'm going to miss my bus to work." Right? And that's how I felt. Life-changing thing, like I'm going to have a baby. And my first thought is, I got lesson plans to do here. I got meetings to reschedule if this baby's happening. It's just weird how our minds work, right?
It's all about you.
Yeah, it's all about me. It's about my stupid, daily schedule is interrupted now because this awesome thing's happening.
Is Emily still working?
Her last day was Thursday. So no, she's done.
Okay. So now she really is just sitting at home waiting.
Yeah. We're all on baby watch.
Did you leave her home tonight?
Yeah, she's at home.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Wouldn't it be cool
if the phone rings?
Wouldn't that be cool if it happened during the show?
I would. Well, I'm ready at any moment. I'm ready at any moment.
It could be a historical episode.
It could be.
And then if it is, I'll bring her back in studio. We'll do a live birth on Section 336.
Right.
First one ever.
I kind of hope it happens. Matt, if you have to roll out, don't worry. I got you covered. I'll take over leadership roles.
Well,
right.
Adam Pohl's here, so I won't be concerned.
Right. I'm sure that internet at the hospital will be great for Memo Live.
Yeah. All right, let's talk some baseball.
Yeah.
All right. Before we get to the Orioles, and I want to ask Adam Pohl about a bunch of young players because you had a chance to watch these young players a lot more than I have. But before we get there, a couple. I mean, there's rumors about.
Did you say where Adam Pohl was from, like Baysox and all?
Yeah, I said voice of the Bowie Baysox.
Voice of.
All right, I missed that.
Of course.
I thought you just jumped in
Pay
with
attention
baby
every
stuff.
now and then.
BaltimoreBaseball.com.
Yeah. Anyway, what kind of bothers me is a lot of players on Twitter. This has never happened before, right? A lot of players on Twitter are coming out saying this is outrageous. What's going on with free agency? Bryce Harper, Manny Machado, this is kind of outrageous.
Yep.
And my concern is, and I want to get your feedback because I think it's 3 issues going on at the same time, not all really directly related, but we kind of lump it into one thing. And so I want to get your take on each of these 3 things.
And those are probably the 3 things that you're seeing people speak out about right now.
Yeah, but I think people kind of lump them all together. I think they're completely separate, but they're just happening at the same time. The first one is the rise of analytics in general management and how they sign players. Okay. We saw 2 guys related to the Orioles. Mark Reynolds came out and said at the same time he had 3 or 4 of offers that were similar.
Well, he tried to point that as, hey, there's some collusion.
Yeah, but Brad Brock said similar things about a week ago when he was signed. He said, I had 3 or 4 offers, all about the same amount. He's they just kind of put in the numbers for you now, and they have an agreed upon.
So
number.
they're saying that analytics has gone beyond stats to now salaries as well.
Right, and they were doing this on, Fangraphs, for example, was doing this years ago, where even for prospects, they could say, this guy has this monetary value, or each WAR win you can get from a guy is worth a certain amount of money, right? Per win above replacement.
Players are now speaking out saying that's affecting their signing.
But what I don't understand, I want your guys' take on this, and I get all that, but what I don't understand is, look at a guy like Brad Brock, who's a decent reliever, right? For him to go to the Yankees, who are stacked from the reliever standpoint, I would imagine he doesn't give that much value to the Yankees. So if he would sign for $500,000, you would take him, right? But he doesn't offer that much value, so you're not going to give him $4 million. But if there's another team, I don't know, with a bad bullpen, I always think of the Nationals having bad bullpens. I don't know what their bullpen is right now, but they would have a greater need for bullpen. So wouldn't Brad Brock's worth be worth more to a team that needs bullpen work than compared to the Yankees. So I understand how
Right,
every
should be.
team can just say, we got a number in mind, either take it or leave it, and just go from there. Right? Like, don't different teams have different needs, and thus that affects how much you value a player? Or is that no longer how things work?
I mean, it should be. Isn't that the whole
Is
point
my
of
point making sense,
bidding
though?
wars? Yeah, you're saying that
Like,
if you
teams
need-
have a certain, like, Brad
Right.
Brock is worth $2.4 million for every single team. But I'm like, different teams have
Right.
different needs, so shouldn't that affect how much they make? But maybe not. Maybe there's enough bullpen guys out there.
Well, you're
that
going to
doesn't
need
matter.
you're going to need bidding wars for that to happen. You're going to need an issue like Manny Machado and Bryce Harper, where 3, 4, 5 teams want those guys.
No, but for years, players got overpaid based
Right.
on team need, right?
Right.
But that just doesn't happen anymore. Is this the new baseball where teams won't overpay even for team need?
Well, I think one of the interesting things is that when you look at it that way, the steroid era leaving baseball 10, 15 years ago, let's say, I think that has changed the level of how people play at certain ages.
Yeah.
So in 2000 or even like 2005, a lot of the best players in baseball were 35 years old. But now, once they hit 30, a lot of players really start to struggle. And the problem is the way baseball's monetary system is set up is that a lot of people don't reach the major leagues till they're 24, 25, 26. And they have so many years before they become a free agent. That's why a Bryce Harper or a Manny Machado that reached the majors at such a young age have such opportunity in the free agent market. It's because of their age.
Right.
I just think that, like, when you look at what the Orioles did a few years ago, and I know Wade Miley had a really good year last year, but when they signed Wade Miley for $9 million and they had Zach Davies ready to go, and he would have cost $550,000, and Zach would have been a better pitcher in the major leagues for the Orioles. I mean, he won 15 games with the Brewers a year or so later, and instead, the Orioles
Overpaid for need,
right,
which maybe
but they
really
paid a
wasn't
guy
need.
18 times more money.
Yeah.
And you think about it, maybe if you have 5 or 10 players that are on that, $500,000, $2 or $3 million contract that allows you to go out and get more, bigger price free agents. And therefore, sometimes I think that's affecting the guys in the middle, and Brock kind of fits that mantra.
That's a great point, especially like back end starters, because they could be replaced by minor league guys in most organizations, and also that middle bullpen arm, right? That's true, that they could be replaced probably by a minor league guy.
I have one other theory, though, on this.
Okay.
And I don't know if it's right or not, but around the same time of the steroid era, I've noticed it, especially with the Orioles and the Nationals, it really affects us in minor league baseball, in our business. But you see that food prices are going down, ticket prices are going down. They're making it much cheaper to go to games. And the reason is because they don't depend on the dollar of in-park as much as they used to. It used to be everything, just like with minor league baseball, how many tickets we sell. I mean, advertising, that's everything. But really, baseball's economic model went towards these regional television deals with the Yes Network, which started in the late 90s. It's not a surprise to me that the Yankees then dominated because they had so much more money than any other team. But now, just like the Orioles with Masson, obviously the Orioles are making money off of everybody's cable bill. So if you know somebody who's never watched an Oriole game before, but they have cable, in December, when there's no Oriole games, the Orioles are still making money off of that person's cable bill.
Sure.
And it's been an enormous
Maybe that person's
boom.
really into the World Series of Poker.
Well, there you go. But the reality of it is that they might never even watch that channel. It doesn't matter. So what has happened is that these baseball teams and player salaries have more than doubled because of it. Your average player used to be $2 to $4 million, and now it seems like a big league regular is $10 million or $8 million plus. And you put all this together, and there's one problem to this whole way of being, and that problem is that people aren't getting cable anymore. That people are dying and people are graduating college, and the people that are dying have cable, and the people that are graduating college are not getting cable. So every year, and people are cutting the cord.
Well,
so every year, 2 million less people nationwide have cable TV. And that is the heart of baseball's economic model right now. Because, in effect, everybody that has cable nationwide just about is paying a baseball team $1 per month of their cable bill. So what's happening, I think, is that the owners are getting nervous that players expect just like everybody else. I mean, they expect their salaries to continue to rise, and owners see that the amount of money they're going to be making, especially now with ESPN cutting out baseball tonight and ESPN starting to pull back the reins on baseball, they're probably worried that their next national TV deal might not be as big. And I think that's what this is all about, that baseball's worried that in 5 years from now, they're not going to have as much money, and baseball players are expecting more. And I think that's the problem.
Yeah.
That's why you're seeing everywhere except for Masson, they've now gotten rid of the baseball blackouts with the MLB app. Because they want you to buy it straight from them, where they're making more money than from the cable company, to try to make up some of that. Eventually, the Angelos family will understand that, and also allow Masson. It really is down to every team except for the Nationals and the Orioles that can do that right now.
Right,
Wow.
and so many more people will do that.
Yes.
There's no doubt about it. But the reality is now everybody that has cable pays to it, whether you're watching it or not. So
Even the Red Sox fans in Severna Park are supporting the Orioles.
Yeah.
right, exactly.
But in that case, we're supporting the Nationals. But I think it's worse than that. I think that this is all about the collective bargaining agreement in 3 years, and that they want to get all these prices down, all these numbers down, spending down, so they can go and tell the players union, hey, we're not making all this money that we used to make.
Well, the interesting thing is because, and that's interesting because in the future it might change, but right now the revenues that the teams are making, the salary really hasn't kept pace with that. The player salaries haven't kept pace with that. And maybe because teams are spending more money in other areas, but also I think the owners are making more money than they probably ever have before, right? And so part of the problem is that that's not trickling down. It feels like owners now, and maybe this isn't true, maybe just my perceptions as a kid and as I grow older become more cynical, but like it appears now that owners are more concerned with making money and having a business that works and makes money than just trying to produce a World Series winning team.
I've never heard anyone in Baltimore ever say that.
Right. Well,
But also look, and everybody wants to copy the teams that have just won, and the Cubs and the Astros. I mean, even the Red Sox. I know the Red Sox spent so much on their starting pitching, but the reality is they did it with a young core of position players as well. So the reality is, why am I going to pay a 32-year-old $13 million a year when I've got Ryan Mountcastle, that's about to come up, and I can pay him $550,000 a year, and he's probably in 2 years going to be better than that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the past 5 years, it was the Cubs, the Red Sox, and the Nationals that spent more than anyone. And
the Cubs just came out saying they have no more money.
That's what I was going to say. I think it's
Tom Rickett. That's
they asked why we didn't spend more,
and he said we didn't have any more.
We don't have any more to spend.
But we all know that's not true.
Yeah, and you would never heard that. I feel like
but they're coming out and saying, "Hey, that's our spending limit."
And that luxury tax or whatever.
No one wants to
become
do that
a very
anymore.
real kind of salary cap in a way.
That's why I
Which,
think,
by the way, I think these things are good as an Orioles fan, right? I don't want other teams spending $250 million on their salary. I want other teams staying down with us.
No, I like the idea of bringing a salary cap to baseball.
Well, I don't know.
And whether you call it collusion or whatever, it seems like baseball is starting to go that way.
Yeah. Here's the awkward thing that makes me kind of uncomfortable on both standpoints. The idea that the owners are making more money than ever, I find annoying. But I also find annoying when, I don't feel any sympathy for Bryce Harper if he's making $30 million a year as opposed to $40 million a year. You're not going to make me feel bad for Bryce Harper.
It's amazing, isn't it?
So, I'm not going to take the player side, and I'm not going to take the owner side either. Just both sides. I mean, if you want to get me
but
fired
it's so
up,
funny because
how about you pay the minor leaguers, right?
Yeah,
if you want to talk about that,
and it wouldn't take much to do that. It doesn't make any sense in that regard. And
why don't minor leaguers make more, Adam?
Well, they should, but the reality and the worry, I think, for minor leaguers is that what baseball teams would do is shrink the minor leagues. I don't think Bowie would be affected, but there's a real chance that rookie ball, short season A, New York Penn League, things like that they might go away.
Right.
And that's something that obviously you don't want to see happen. But I think with the amount of money in the game, it's asinine that players don't get paid more. I literally hosted a few years ago when the baseball's winter meetings were at the National Harbor. I had the honor of being the official host of the minor league winter meetings. So I was like the MC, the opening ceremonies MC, cool. and I introduced the president of minor league baseball.
Oh, wow.
And he gave a speech, and the speech was basically all about what they're doing politically to make sure that everything doesn't blow up, in a way. What they're doing to make sure they can keep salaries relatively similar so that the model of what the minor leagues is right now isn't completely thrown into chaos. And it was in front of 1,000 minor league baseball executives. Yeah. And then the next thing that we did was we went to lunch, which is a big dais, and I wasn't a part of that. And there was another minor league broadcaster that ran that event, and they gave out the Home Run Hitter of the Year award, and it actually went to Rhys Hoskins. And Rhys of the Phillies now, but he had hit 40 home runs that year in the Eastern League in Reading. Right. And they gave out a certain amount of money, like a few $100 for every home run. So he got a check for $8,000. And literally the first thing he said, he got the check and he said, I just want to thank everybody here so much for this award. He goes, and I just made as much with this check that I made all year playing minor league baseball.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
And people laughed, and I thought it was funny because
it's funny and
the
sad,
president
right?
of minor league baseball was giving him the check and literally just giving a speech 15 minutes earlier about that.
Yeah.
And it seems like something where it wouldn't be that hard to increase salaries, like as you move up levels, you make more money.
I think it'd have to come
going together.
It would have to come from the players' union, right. Because I know a lot of teams, and I don't know enough about the baseball deal, but I think in the NBA and in the NFL, it's like a certain percentage of revenues have to go to player salaries. So in effect, what players could do is say that this many percentage has to go to us, and this, they could up the percentage that has to go to the minor leagues.
It's like the skip a cup of coffee and you can save a child or something. It's like that for minor league players. If Manny Machado would just take $350 instead of $400, 100 more minor league baseball players can have salaries.
It wouldn't even nearly have to be that.
But you cut a little bit of that off of every player,
right?
And the minor leagues suddenly become a reasonable check.
It's just unbelievable. Donnie Hart was on the Baysox in 2016, and nobody knew who he was. And when Brian Mattis really struggled, fell apart, and was out of baseball, I started getting calls from beat writers, and I was like, and they were all asking me about Donnie Hart. I'm like, oh my God, Donnie Hart, who nobody has ever heard of, a Division II player who's literally like 5'9" is about to go to the major leagues. This is absolutely crazy. And so what ends up happening is that he did, and he performed extremely well.
Sure.
So he really stuck. He did come down for about a week or two, but I kind of did the math. I don't know exactly right, but Hart was a guy that got no signing bonus. He was in the 20s as far as his draft round. He was making about $8,000, $8,000 to $10,000 a year playing baseball that year. He was working a full-time job in the off season. And when Hart got called up to the Orioles that year, when you added in his playoff bonus, because that was, of course, when the Orioles lost in Toronto, I was able to figure out that Donnie probably made between $200 and $250,000 playing baseball that year. When in June he was on pace to make $8,000.
Right.
I mean, it's just unbelievable.
That's why you put up with the $8,000, is because you've got the chance for that payday.
Right.
Yeah, it's crazy, and we've interviewed and talked to a lot of minor leaguers on this podcast. And I no longer will even ask what are you doing? I remember when I asked in the off season, to get ready for next season. And working, right?
But
job,
it's a big advantage for those that get picked very highly. So a DJ Stewart or a Ryan Mountcastle, these are players that got over $1 million when they signed. Yeah. Right. So they're literally living off of that bonus. I mean, even Manny Machado was making $8,000 a year playing baseball. He just got a $5 million bonus. So he was okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but players like that, they're able to treat their bodies and this like a full-time job, where Donnie Hart is literally working a 9 to 5.
I have to support my whatever, my life, my family.
Yeah, I think it was one summer where we had Alex Murphy on, who got a small bonus.
Yeah, a small bonus.
And then we had Jeff Kemp on, who you asked him what he was doing during the off season, and he said he was laying bricks.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, absolutely. The third thing I wanted to mention is I think the Harper Machado not signing, I don't think they're directly connected to the conversation we're just having.
Did you get to the second thing?
Yeah, the second thing was owners.
Okay.
Adam kind of stole my thunder a little bit, but about the owners. But the third thing I think is the Harper Machado thing. I think this is a trend where players are just signing late. People say this is a sign the system's broken. But if Harper ends up, or Machado ends up signing for, $35 million a year, that's not a sign that things are broken. Right? So just the fact that they signed later, I don't think is significant to say that the whole system is broken.
Right.
It just means they're taking a lot longer to negotiate these contracts.
And with guys working out on their own, spring training in those first few weeks is less and less important.
Tell that to Alex Cobb last year.
I was going to say there's plenty of guys who are showing up out of shape. But the guys like Manny Machado, Bryce Harper are not just sitting back on the couch waiting.
Yeah, I mean, and like the idea that...
But they got to be careful, because if you break your leg working out...
Yes.
That's true.
Every day they go,
Alex Cobb could not basically even throw, and these guys usually start a program in December, so they're probably not doing what they would have been in the years past. It's not like they're doing nothing either.
Right. Do you take out an insurance policy, I guess, when you're a free agent? In between?
I'm sure.
I'm sure
Machado
the Orioles have
insurance
when they sign a player, but I would assume you have personal insurance in between that.
Good
to make
point.
sure you get some money, and like the celebrity stories that come out every now and then.
Yeah, but and again, I don't think if he ends up going for like $20 million a year, I think that would be a huge story. But as long as they get their money, it sounds like from the reports you're hearing that they're going to get their money. It's just
I mean,
Manny's
saying he's not signing anything that doesn't start with a 3. So
yeah, it sounds like they're all going to make around, if not more than $30 million a year. So I think they're going to be okay. So I don't think that's a huge.
All right.
And teams want them too, right? It's not like no one wants them. So I think that's kind of a non-story.
Right.
But I hate when people say the system's broken. Why? Because Machado and Harper haven't signed yet. As if no one's offered them a deal. Wasn't it like a week into the offseason, the Nationals offered 10 years for $300 million?
Right. And he's probably going to get something very close to that, too.
Yeah. But don't say like the system's broken because nobody wants Harper. That's not true.
Yeah,
people want Harper.
They've each met with about 5 teams.
He's just, I have also heard. I think it's interesting. I guess the two, Boris and I don't know who Machado's guy is. I guess that they don't like each other either. So there's some competition there too, which is fun.
Right. They don't want to be the first one to sign because they want to
outdo the
$2 more than the other guy. Yeah. Sure.
All right. Let's get to some Orioles talk.
All right. I thought that was a little Oriole talk, but okay.
Yeah, specifically Orioles talk. We have Adam Pohl, voice of the Bowie Baysox here. I want to talk about some specific players.
Good.
Let's start with this. When all the trades went down at the trade deadline, a lot of those guys ended up in Bowie.
Yes.
If I have this right, Dean Kramer, Bruce Zimmerman, Zach Pop, Rylan Bannon, and Yusniel Diaz all ended up at the Baysox.
We had a few more, too. We had Dylan Tate and also Cumberland, the catcher. Yeah, so basically the Orioles, I think they drafted, or not drafted, but they traded for 15 players. 13 of them were minor league players, and 7 of them were in Bowie. And in essence, that's 7 out of 25 players. So, I mean, it was a major change to our team.
Yeah. So were there any of those guys that stood out to you as being, like Diaz, of course, is the most highly kind of rated and ranked prospect from those guys. But what was your initial impressions of those players? Were there any that stood out to you as being like, whoa, you got to see this guy?
The two that really stood out as far as playing extremely well for Bowie were Dean Kramer and Zach Pop. Yeah. They're very different players. Dean Kramer, I love his attitude for the game. He's really tough. I mean, he's a guy that has that fire inside, and I think that can really help as far as the attitude of a pitcher. And for Kramer, he's a hard worker. He's an underdog. He got an incredible amount of attention when he came to, well, all these players did because they were traded for Manny Machado. But Kramer was a 14th round draft choice, so he was not a highly drafted ball player. And he has really proved that he has been an overachiever in the minor leagues. He's got a great curveball, and also, though, has a fastball. And this is a word that you're going to hear a lot in the new era of Oriole baseball, but that has great spin rate.
Yeah.
So therefore, he might not be throwing 97, but you're like, boy, guys aren't squaring that up much. And that third pitch, I think, is what is still yet to be seen as far as really developing. But when you have 2 above average pitches and really that kind of gusto to go after guys, he's just a great competitor. He's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Now, he had an oblique strain 2 weeks before spring training, so he's in Major League Spring Training right now, but he's not doing any activities. So let's hope that doesn't put him way behind. Many feel because he was so dominant last year, there's a good chance that he would be in AAA. The new regime, I think, is much more apt to promoting players if they have success very quickly than the former regime did. But in the same regard, I believe Dean Kramer's made 6 or 7 AA starts, and that's not a lot. So, for instance, Kramer was pitching better down the stretch than Dylan Tate was. But you have to realize Tate's been in AA for more than a year. He's probably made around 30 AA starts, where Kramer has made 7. Right. So it wouldn't be a surprise to me if Dean Kramer starts the year in Bowie, especially that he came into the spring a little bit nicked up. But after he gets his sea legs, a month and a half, 2 months, that he would go to AAA or even push to pitch in the major leagues this year. I would not be surprised at all if Dean Kramer starts in the big leagues this year.
Yeah, that'd be great to see. I was looking at the Dakota projections for Orioles pitchers. We're projected to have, I think, 13 different starters, which is like, well, that's a lot. But then I looked at last year. I think there was 14 last year.
Right. Yeah.
And so, like right now, I think there's a lot of interesting kind of opening spots on this roster. But
not
and a quick thing on
second half of the season, it'll really open up.
But even like first week of the season, like opening day roster, we don't have a 4th or 5th starter.
Right.
Like we need to find a 4th or 5th starter, and there's a lot of candidates for those spots.
Quick note on Zach Pop. He could be one of these really young players that is in the major leagues very quickly. Okay. Because
great fastball, right?
He's a reliever and a reliever only, and he's a Zach Britton reliever, meaning that he's got a great sinker. And
I see Zach Pop. He sees Zach with the CH or with the CK.
He's with a CH.
Okay, are we sure about that?
He's Canadian, and he's been a well-traveled guy because he played baseball in the SEC at Kentucky, and then, of course, was all around. I mean, he started in low A last year, got promoted to high A, gave up 1 run in 33 high A innings, and then got traded and promoted to Bowie. The first outing he had, he had a first at bat, which was a ground ball that probably should have been an out that was a double down the left field line. And the next thing you know, things fell apart for him. He walked 2 guys. He gave up 3 or 4 runs. And then you look after that, he was absolutely dominant. So his numbers in Bowie were good, but if you take away his first outing, he was outstanding. He was only 21 years old, I believe, last year. So he's still very young. And in the past regime, there's no doubt he would be back in Bowie after touching 3 levels last year. But I think, there's a really good chance that Pop, I mean, even if he starts in Bowie, he could be in Baltimore by mid-season because he is what he is. It's not like he needs to develop a different pitch or do more. I mean, he is a guy with an upper 90s fastball that can really sink it. He's going to go after you, and that's kind of the name of his game. And he could be a back-end reliever for the Orioles in this next generation to watch out for.
Yeah, you mentioned a couple times the new regime, and I'm interested to see. A lot of people talked about how this will affect like how the Orioles draft and sign and trade and acquire talent. But I'm kind of more interested in how they kind of change how they're developing the talent that they have.
Correct.
Using all this new technology and
what does it
data.
mean for guys who've kind of hung around, like a guy like Mike Wright?
Yeah,
who has always been there and given chance after chance after chance. How long does your chance then last with this new thing?
Yeah, but what I want to ask Adam about specifically with this technology stuff.
Sure.
We saw Zach Britton, speaking of Zach Britton, go to New York and say, oh, wow, they're really giving me a lot of data here that I didn't have.
Yeah.
Now, what about the reverse effect? So did we have anybody from your experience come from these outside organizations and we're like, got to the Orioles and like, guys, where is the data?
Right.
Oh, there's definitely.
Yeah.
And you don't want to downplay what the Orioles were doing because the reality is what they were doing is similar to what's been done in baseball for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And it's just this was a new age. And you have to realize with Mike Elias and especially the assistant GM, Sig Mejdal, that they are not only people that were doing what is now the new age, but they were just about the first to do it. They almost created this new way of being. When Dean Kramer, especially the Dodger guys, which were Kramer, Pop, Diaz, and Bannon, Dean Kramer was the number 1 player at looking at film of himself, of any player on the Bay Sox last year. And in essence, for pitchers especially, you notice here in spring training, I think it's called ergotronic. I'm not 100% on the exact pronunciation, but ergotronic cameras. What you're looking at is usually when you take a camera, I might say this, you can take this many snaps per second, but this is something that is at way higher level. And it can just look at the grip and look at, just break down your mechanics in a whole other way. Yeah. But it's even more than that, because I think especially with your fastball, the Astros last year, they led the major leagues in strikeouts. But what's crazier is they led every single level of the minor leagues in strikeouts.
Oh, that's great. I didn't know that.
Which is
crazy.
unbelievable.
Wow.
And it shows one main thing, which is that so much of baseball is about, I'm going to pitch down in the zone, I'm going to get contact, try to get early outs. Well, that's not really what the new way of the Orioles is in pitching. It's all about getting ahead in the count, and if you're a fastball pitcher, which most pitchers are that are very good, you throw high fastballs, and you try to get them to chase, and you try to strike out as many guys as you can. And it's interesting. I started thinking, once I read into this, I started thinking about the Orioles pitchers that I think in the minor leagues best fit that kind of template, because they're looking for high spin rate guys at different pitches, like a Dean Kramer breaking ball or a Keegan Aiken fastball. These pitches that, you say, why can't anybody square this up? And then try to get them to pitch in a certain pattern around that. And
not to mention also guys who are open to changing what they do.
Yeah.
Like if you remember when Jake Arrieta left, part of when he left, he was bad-mouthing the Orioles because they were trying to get him to change things that he didn't want to change. And
right.
We've heard it with some other players in the past as well.
Well, and based on just kind of the initial response, because they're already introduced this stuff at spring training, and everyone seems to be, I haven't heard anyone come out and say, I don't like this, right? Everyone seems to be all on board with it.
And that's a good thing with having a bunch of young guys who just want to make an impact, with having veterans who had the worst year of their career last year.
Right.
Is you're open to different stuff.
But in the end, for us, can I just say, this will make for longer, more boring baseball, right? Because more strikeouts, less balls in play.
Oh, there's no doubt about it.
That's part of what the problem with the pace of play in baseball is.
And to be honest, on the offensive side, the Orioles are going to be looking at drafting players that have a very good eye at the plate.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at a guy like Ryan McKenna, who is going to be in Bowie, he's not a big power hitter, but he fits that mandate because McKenna has hit great. I mean, he hit 377 in the first half in Frederick last year, which in my 12 years in the Orioles organization, nobody has done. And he did it at a young age, 21 years old. And then he struggled in Bowie, but he hit 230 in Bowie. But you look at his on-base percentage, it was 340. Even though he hit 230 in Bowie, he was still at a higher on-base percentage in Bowie than, let's say, Cedric Mullins did. And in the same regard, it's above the league average. And then he went to the Arizona Fall League and hit 370 again. So, it's going to be very interesting to see the types of players that they draft in this regard. But you're going to see a lot of pitches in Oriole games.
That whole bat and eye thing fascinates me, because you would think, like, as a hitter, you could kind of learn that and get better at that. But it seems to kind of follow you through the minors, right? Like, if you have a good bat and eye, it seems to stay that way. And if you don't have a good bat and eye, if you don't walk, that seems to follow you too.
One other thought on this is just like, analytics is such a vague word. And the Oriole reporters and in the Elias news conference, they're saying we're going to have a more analytical approach. Analytics are going to be an enormous part of what we're doing. It doesn't mean we're not going to use our scouts anymore, but analytics. So what does that mean? And in essence, what analytics means is information. I mean, they are going to be giving, just like you were talking about, Matt, they're going to be giving so much more information to their players than was happening before. And it's amazing. When I talked to an Orioles representative and I asked him about analytics and how they could help players and their swing path. And they basically told me that they're like, Adam, there's a thing called blast motion. It's a sensor you put on the bottom of the bat, and we've been using it for this many years. And if you're not using it right now, I'm worried about you because it costs less than $100.
Right.
And it literally is a great way to teach and what the consistency of bat path and instruction. It's not just somebody saying, hey, do this, but you're going back and you're looking at your model and you're saying, okay, see what you're doing here.
Right.
And it can really help iron out issues in the swing.
Well, that's the trickle down of this technology. That's the type of thing that you can now buy as a high school player.
Correct.
And a little leaguer. You need to get that for Albie right now, Bert.
I'm all over it. I'm looking it up right now.
You just put it on your phone and you can track his swing rate. And it makes you question why stuff like that wasn't being used in the minors. I know the Baysox, your schedule starts a few weeks after the Orioles for actual games. And with this new regime, have you seen a trickle down yet or an effect on the Baysox? Besides, like, you've got a new manager, but you don't.
Right.
No real pour down yet, right?
No, but there will be an effect. I think there's going to be two effects, but these are long-term effects. The first one won't really come into being, especially for us at AA, for a few years. But the way that Buck Showalter liked to operate things was that he wanted veteran players in AAA. So let's say Jonathan Scope gets hurt for a week. Well, he's not going to bring up the prospect second baseman from Bowie. He's going to bring up the guy that's played in the big leagues before because he's going to be out for 6 days. Where
your Paul Giannis or whatever it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So therefore, guys like Manny Machado, whatever it might be, they went straight from Bowie to the big leagues, or they didn't play in Norfolk long at all. This new regime, it seems, are going to use Norfolk just like anything else. So the Tides, when you look this year, I've never said before that they're the most exciting team to watch in the system, but they might be this season.
Even without Pedro
Alvarez.
Yeah.
But you understand, because all these guys
like
aren't going to get stuck in Bowie. Trey Mancini was almost the MVP of the Eastern League. The Baysox won the championship. He hit .359 in Bowie in 4 months, and the next season he was back in Bowie. And that's not going to happen again. The second aspect, though, I think will affect Josh more the lower levels of the minors. The Baysox, largely because prospects get stuck in Bowie, and they've also are willing to bring in older players to Bowie to fill the roster, which I don't think we're going to see as much of in the new regime. The Baysox are going to get younger. The Baysox have had 12 winning seasons in the last 14 years. 12 500 or better seasons in 14 years. The Frederick Keys, one level below, have had 30 years, and they've had 8 winning seasons. And a reason I think for that is because the Orioles have not had good young Latin players. And they're not going out and single A and getting a ton of minor league veterans that help a team like the Baysox. In essence, they're trying to give their drafted players a chance, but 30% of the other teams, 30 to 50%, are good Latin players, and we don't have that.
Right.
And I think that's going to change. So I think the low levels of the minor leagues are going to be really aided by that fact. You're going to see a lot more, and you really did already. You saw more international signings this year than you've seen in probably any year prior, if I had to guess. But impact international signings are really going to jump. If you look at the tiers of spending in international market over the last 10 years, I think there were 3 tiers. There were the teams that spent a ton. There were the teams that spent, a good chunk, and then there were the Orioles.
Right. We just didn't spend,
at all. And I think that that's going to really be a big, big difference in the system.
Yeah, and that's a long-term thing, right? Because a lot of times you're getting those guys when they're teenagers, right?
Right.
So you're still looking at 2 or 3 or 4 years before they even show
make
up
it to Double A, undoubtedly.
So that means also that winning streak in Bowie is going to end because now there's room for guys to move up into Norfolk.
It might, but the also reality of it is the Orioles traded for 13 minor leaguers last year, and they already had a farm system that was rated in the middle of baseball. I think they're getting underrated right now.
Depending who you ask.
Well, last year, a lot of people rated the Orioles between 15th and 18th in the minor leagues.
Was it Keith Law that had
Keith
them
Law, dead last?
Dead last. I don't understand it. I mean,
he's biased.
What he's looking at is he's looking at players that could be impact, all-star type players. But the Orioles have a lot of depth as far as players that could be good major league players. And what's going to happen is some of them are going to over-exceed expectations and be that, and some of them are not. But especially with pitching, I mean, you look at the last few drafts, the Orioles have basically just drafted pitchers. And when I look at the minor leagues as a whole, not just Bowie this year, when you look at box scores as an Oriole fan, no matter what team you're looking at this season, the starting pitcher is basically going to be a prospect. I mean, at almost every level, because unless if you start in the big leagues in AAA, you'll have Keegan Aiken and Dylan Tate and Dean Kramer pretty soon. Those guys will be there. In AA, you'll have Zach Lowther and Michael Bauman and Alex Wells and Brian Gonzalez, who really finished strong last season that people forget about. In Frederick, you'll have D.L. Hall and Brennan Hanafy, and in Delmarva, and Cameron Bishop, and in Delmarva, you'll have Grayson Rodriguez and others. It's going to be extremely interesting. There's never been this many starting pitchers to follow in the Orioles organization.
Yeah,
that's exciting.
A couple of things about the prospects, though.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing is, I don't buy any of First of all, the second I saw the Orioles only had 3 top 100 prospects, I went and did some research, and by research, I looked at Fangraphs to see if they had an article about this, about like
how many top 100s actually.
Yeah, or the reverse, like
out.
The stat was 40% of WAR in baseball. If you add up all the WAR, 40% of it is done by guys who were never top 100 prospects.
Right.
So that's a lot of contributions coming from guys who were never top 100 prospects. So it doesn't mean everything. And the other thing about the issue I have with the prospects, just look at last year. Our number 1 prospect last year was Austin Hayes, who this year, after last year, he dropped down to 4. Our number 2 guy last year going in the season was Cisco, who's now off the board. I don't know if that's because Major League time is, I don't know why, but he's not even on the list.
He's probably played too much in the bigs,
Yeah. And the third guy on that list was Harvey, Hunter Harvey, who's now 22. And so our top 3 went to 4 off the list and 22, right? Which tells you either we got a ton of new, better prospects, or those all fallen off. And Austin Hayes, he's still the same player, right? Like, he had a bad year, a bunch of injuries, but he's still the same player he was last year, right?
But it's also they're trying to project the high school kid. So every year is a huge shift in projections.
But that's my thing. Like, I've seen so many, just as an Orioles fan, so many top, specifically pitchers, top-rated pitchers,
right,
top prospects in single A, double A. Like, I'm not excited about DL Hall. I know everyone says get excited about Hall, great lefty. Everyone says get excited about Grayson Rodriguez, fastball. Everyone tells me I'm not excited about them because I've seen so many players start off as 1 and 2 and 3 prospects, and by the time they got to the majors, through injuries or whatever, they weren't good anymore. So I don't know. You're selling me every prospect, every starting pitcher will be a prospect, which I'm excited about. But at the same time, like, I don't know how I've been fooled too many times.
There's an age-old adage that is that you can't have enough pitching prospects, and
for good reason, right?
Right, and obviously it's maybe the most fragile position in sport. So. When you really look at it, that's why I like it, because the Orioles are in a position right now where they're not all in on 1 or 2 guys being the guy, because they've got a lot of different people that have the chance, and hopefully a few pan out to be that guy. And that's the exciting part of where the Orioles are. I'm really excited to see Harvey this year. He needs more time in the minor leagues, but boy, I mean, if he still has his stuff and is able to stay healthy, it wouldn't surprise me if the Orioles try to make him the next generation's hater of their team. A guy that could just go out there and blow smoke for 2 or 3 innings and just be dominant. That wouldn't surprise me at all. I still think he's got a chance to be a big difference maker, and that's what you've got to hope for. But yeah, when I started in the Orioles system, my second year with the Keys, it was Matt Wieters and Jake Arrieta. And then a few years later, it was Machado and Scope. And then it was in 11. And then in 12 in Frederick, it was Gosman and Bundy. Yep. But the reality is the Orioles' top prospects are not – their number 1 and their number 2 prospect are not as highly thought of in the industry as they were in that era. But their 12th to 18th prospect is way better.
And that makes sense to me. And I mean, Austin Hayes is another good example of that, right? Because he was a top 100 guy last year,
right?
But you could argue if he still has that same talent, right, he should still be a top 100 guy. But he's on no top 100 list,
right?
But I don't think he got worse. I think he just had an injury plague.
I had a really interesting talk with Hayes at the end of last year, and you kind of get worried about talking to a player about this, but Austin is such an open book that he's a great guy to talk to. I thought Hayes came into last season really bulky. I mean, he just looked so top heavy. He was a guy that was really buff in his first year in Bowie when he was absolutely dominant, but he looked really ripped. I mean, enormous up top this year or last year. And he told me that when he hurt his foot, and he was out for the 2 months in Bowie, that he lost 10 pounds. And that's something that he was working on. And I saw a picture of him. And usually pictures kind of add weight. He looked extremely lean to me. I think that could really help him. Obviously, he's going to have a better eye at the plate. That's the one thing that stands out to me as a worry with Hayes. He's very, very aggressive. But in the same regard, he's a dynamic player. I mean, this is a guy that could be a big-time home run hitter and a guy that's just diving all over. He's the kind of player that will be a fan favorite in Baltimore. He gives everything he has all the time. And I think that the leaner body type, more flexibility because he's such a quick twitch guy, is the way that Hayes needs to be. And I thought he was too bulky last year.
Looking at all, though, that's really interesting. But if you look at we have a lot of outfield prospects. DJ Stewart,
right?
We mentioned Austin Hayes, Cedric Mullins, McKenna. You mentioned. Diaz, of course.
Right.
If you were a betting man, Adam, which one of these guys do you think has a chance to be a great Major League Baseball? Is there one of those outfielders or two that you think they have a good chance of sticking and being really good outfielders?
Yeah, I don't know. You want to say Diaz because obviously he's got the numbers. I didn't see it so consistently with him, but he's only 22 years old, obviously. To me, Hayes would be the most dynamic player. But the way Hayes plays, he might not, and his size, he might be a guy that can do it for a short period of time, but he might have a 3-year window where he's a star. And I could see Austin being a guy that could go to a few All-Star games if he stayed healthy and everything went right. And he would be, I'm telling you, he would be beloved in Baltimore. Yeah. The way that our city is and how we want our Orioles to play. Right, the first question to the new manager Brent Hyde at the Fan Fest, wasn't it about guys running down to first base? I mean,
yeah.
And Austin Hayes
is with hustle.
Austin Hayes looks like Usain Bolt level of effort. You know, as he races down to first, dives all over the place, has a great arm. That's the kind of, he's a gritty ball player, and so I think that he's a guy that even could make a major impact on the Orioles this season.
It'll be interesting to see how you teach that patience at the plate, because I think that's something that you've got to learn in the minor leagues. Right. Because it's not something you learn in high school. Because high school, you're the star. You're there to hit the home runs and score. And to come into the minors and to have that patience where you're used to swing away, it's got to be an adjustment, and it's got to be a head game that you've got to get used to.
Yeah, and if I can build off that to move to talk about a guy who I'm kind of most interested in watching this year in the minors, whether it's AAA or AA. AAA, I would imagine. And here's a guy that Buck Showalter told that maybe you should look at some more balls. Ryan Mountcastle. My first question is, what's the deal with him and his position? Like, I could watch Josh play, 10 minutes at third base, and I could tell you, is it going to work out or not? How long do you have to watch a guy play third base before you can figure out if he's a third baseman or not? So is Ryan Mountcastle a third baseman, and how do you think the new regime is going to handle Ryan Mountcastle?
This is one of the best questions, I think, and most important questions.
Because batting-wise, he has it, right? Batting-wise, he has it. It's just a position.
So much of the minor leagues is about your age, and Mountcastle put up outstanding numbers last year. He was one of the top 5 or 10 hitters in the AA Eastern League, but he was 3 years younger than the average player.
Did he take more walks?
He did. Yeah, I think he improved. He improved. Well, but that's not. I mean, he's a very aggressive hitter.
Right.
And Hayes is too. Those are both guys that you're not going to see them take very many fastball strikes.
Good. As a fan, it's not I like that.
It's not like,
Adam Jones style.
The count is 1-2, and it's a called strike 3 on the outside corner with a fastball. Like, they're guys that are going to be ripping away. But with Mountcastle, he's got a very fluid...
3 years younger.
Right.
So that's not what we're used to hearing within the Orioles organization. Normally it seems like the guys we hear about are older, guys like Caleb Joseph who spend forever in the minors. So to be 3 years younger and hitting that well is a good thing if you can groom it.
Manny Machado hit far lower worse per se than Mountcastle did in the minor leagues, but Machado was in Double-A when he was 19, and he was a league average Double-A player.
Right.
And you're sitting there going, "What is this guy going to be like when if he was 24 in this league? What would this be like?"
Yeah.
So with Mountcastle, what's so interesting is there was a report today from John Mioli of the Baltimore Sun that Mountcastle was working out at first base.
Oh, really?
And
Oh.
this is really interesting because
Yeah,
I think
like
we
it.
talked about it last year. Somebody in Frederick told me 2 years ago that they thought that Mountcastle was a first baseman. And the original inclination from an Orioles fan's thought process is, oh my God, really? Like, we have Mark Trumbo,
Right.
we
We got
have
enough.
Chris Davis, Trey Mancini's playing in the outfield, he's a first baseman, and now this our best hitting prospect is a first baseman.
Yeah.
Like, this is a disaster. But the reality of it, because Mountcastle really doesn't have much of an arm at all, is that he provides much more value as a player. He would be a top 50 prospect as
Yes.
a first baseman.
Yes.
Because he has a little bit of range, not great range, but do many first basemen have great range?
Right.
So this is a guy that can really pick it. He's got a very good glove. He can do it. He can do it at first base. But the reality of it, because obviously you don't throw much at first base,
Right.
but his bat,
Unless you're Chris Davis and you're called into pitch occasionally.
right? That's
but
true.
yeah.
But his bat, I think, can play as a first baseman. I mean, he's a guy that some people think could be like a 35, home run hitter kind of guy. So with that being said, I think you have to look at the long-term approach when you look at the Orioles in every way, shape, and form. Mike Elias said, we believe that there are a lot of players in this organization now that are going to be on the next great Oriole team,
Yes.
in effect, the next playoff team.
Yes.
And I think he's talking about Ryan Mountcastle.
Yeah, I thought he meant
Because
World Series team, not playoff team. But
but
whatever.
you're right.
Yeah.
But if the
Yeah.
Orioles are going to be really good in 3 to 5 years, which is what they're hoping to do,
Yeah.
the reality of it, and I feel bad in saying this, but most likely those teams are not going to include Chris Davis or Trumbo.
Oh, definitely.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a chance the Oriole team might not include Chris Davis or Mark Trumbo at the end of this year.
Yep.
Sure.
And, so in September, you're looking at
your
Mountcastle at
fingers.
first base and Mancini possibly DHing.
Yeah.
So I really believe that this is a great thing for the Orioles and for Mountcastle, because you want to put him in a place to succeed. The other thing is he was working so hard at trying to up his level defensively. This in time, it's going to take some time for him to get used to it, but over the years, this is going to allow him to focus more, if it sticks, on what he's really great at, which is swinging the bat.
Yeah, I was not aware of that report, but that makes me really happy because some of the stuff I've heard is that he'll end up in left field. And
Right.
every time I heard that,
Right.
I cringed because
You think of Trey.
we got a ton of great prospects who
Yeah.
can play outfield, and I'd rather have, get this, an outfielder playing outfield,
Right.
like someone who's fast
Right.
and can throw.
That's crazy.
Right? And I don't just want I'm tired of us throwing Mark Trumbo, or let's throw the unathletic guy, not unathletic, but let's throw the guy who doesn't have a position, right? Just out in left field.
Right.
I want an outfielder out in left field.
Right.
I mean, if you put Hayes, Mullins, and McKenna in an outfield,
Yeah.
not many balls are going
No
to fall.
balls are landing. Yeah. But if you put Mancini, Mike
Trumbo.
Mountcastle,
Right. So
and Trumbo out there,
yeah, so Mountcastle today kind of played it down of, they're just getting me used to different positions in case I'm ever needed.
Right.
But Brandon Hyde spoke out, and when he was talking to reporters, he said that wherever you saw players today is their primary position.
yeah,
What you really want to do as well is you want to maximize the value of your players. I don't believe Mountcastle is a player that would get traded. I believe that the Orioles would be more apt to trade, somebody else, like even a Mancini, which I hope that wasn't the case, because Mancini is such a great guy.
Yeah,
I think he
I
could
love
be a
Mancini.
great leader
Yeah.
in this next generation. So I hope to not see that.
Yeah.
But the reality of it is that if you play Mountcastle for a half season in the minor leagues, his value is going at first base, I should say, is going to be so much higher as a player than he is at third base.
because instead of being, here's a guy with a great bat, but he's a liability at third defensively. Here's a guy with a good bat that can also play a good first base.
Correct.
Right, and that just
Yeah.
changes
So
the narrative.
This is one of those things to kind of mark and keep track of, as this could be the first thing of this regime saying, hey, here's some analytics and adjusting a player by moving him from third Orioles moved him last year from short to third.
Well, I think that
but
was
here to move him to first base could be the first thing of we're going to do things differently.
Yeah, but Adam, why was he at third for so long if he lacked range and lacked an arm? Like,
it's a great question.
earlier?
Obviously, it's not like he was completely inept in every aspect of the position, but he's not a guy that was going to be able to play second base, I don't think, as far as his build and everything of that nature. Third base, I thought it was an unusual move. Yeah. Obviously, he played third base. I watched him play third base every day all year last year.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that he was inept, but the reality of it is, think about how when the Orioles got good in 2012, a big part of that was their outstanding defense in the infield.
Yeah,
and,
definitely.
With a lot of the players that the Orioles are bringing in right now, the Rule 5 draft, they're bringing in a bunch of defensive middle infielders. You know that the Orioles are going to place a little bit more on that side. I mean, and it's interesting because Buck Showalter, especially when the Orioles got good in 2012, 13, 14, he was that was a big part of the team, was Wieters at the catcher, Hardy and Scope up the middle, and then Adam Jones in center. I mean, talking about dynamic power at all those positions and good defense. So, and Machado's defense at third was just extraordinary.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, you got to put players in spots where they can succeed, and the analytics, once again, the information tells you and can quantitate how important defense is now. And he would be a guy that would cost you a lot of runs. Yeah. And once again, you just feel for him, in a way where it's like, he makes a tough play defensively, and then he's got to come up to the plate and he's pressing that next time up. I think this will take a lot of pressure off of him and make him even a better hitter.
That's good to hear. Good. I hope he finds a starting job. Do we expect him to start at AAA? Is that where we would expect him to start?
Good chance, but I mean, if they're doing a major position change, Wilson Garcia was the player I had tabbed for Bowie, and he was lost in the minor league phase of the Rule 5 draft. So there's no real first baseman in Bowie per se. That's not what matters for a player like Mountcastle, is where a spot is, because wherever he needs to be is where he's going to be. Yeah. But I wouldn't be surprised if they were to start him in Bowie for a month and try to get him acclimated and then go up to AAA. But the reality is he came up to Bowie late in 17. He's been with the Baysox for a year and a month. So he's a guy that's ready for AAA.
But he'd still be young even in Double A, right?
I think his birthday was
today.
Is it today?
It was today.
His 22nd
Happy
birthday, so he's very young.
But Bowie also has the advantage of being 40 minutes from Camden Yards.
Right.
That if there's a guy like Mountcastle that maybe some of the bigger league team wants to work with, or you want your analytic team working more with him, putting him at Bowie makes more sense, where you can get him up to Camden Yards when you need to.
It's going to be interesting to me also the kind of the kind of equipment that they use in the minors, that they install.
Some new cameras.
And because a lot of the talk was, hey, look, our payroll is going to take an enormous fall, but we're going to invest this in technology. And a lot of that's going to be at the minor league level. Every minor league ballpark has TrackMan, which is a big part of how the Orioles have been signing pitchers this offseason. Uh-huh. But because it's all about spin rates and things of that nature. But it's going to. This is a thing I'm really excited to see, because I do think though that if the greater technology would allow them to feel comfortable with watching things on video and gaining the same insights, so therefore it's not as important to see a guy in Bowie. Like in Norfolk, it's still I can kind of get what I need in that way. But you're right, because it wouldn't be a surprise to me if we do see in Bowie both Maidal and also Elias in Bowie and in minor league stadiums a lot.
Well, even Maidal, one of his stories was that he went and was a minor league, traveled around all the minor league teams and sat on the bench in uniform. So I assume you're going to see him in Bowie a few times this year.
You know it.
You mentioned the importance of defense up the middle, them getting these young players, these Rule 5 guys. Were you guys surprised? What are you guys' thoughts on the Celtis Escobar signing?
Yeah, last week we all thought Richie Martin was going to be the shortstop.
Here's a veteran shortstop who's actually defensive metrics the past couple of years haven't looked very good. Older guy. Were you guys surprised at this signing? What's your guys' kind of take on this, the Escobar signing? Bert?
It's a name that I've heard of. That's what I took away from
Orioles All-Star.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Best shortstop out there, right, in free agency?
Well, I saw who was signed today. Another shortstop was just signed today, but signed for like $3 million
Right.
as compared to what $700,000 we paid.
Yeah, I wonder, and Adam can speak to this better, is how much of that is to give your pitcher some confidence.
You know what I think it is, and that's your take. Here's my take.
Yeah,
I think he's there as kind of a veteran leader.
guy who's been to a World Series.
I think it's also a guy that you just don't want to hand Richie Martin the shortstop job. So here's some token competition for spring training, and here's like a veteran. You can see how he prepares for a game,
Right.
a major leaguer. But I wouldn't be surprised if Escobar doesn't even make the roster.
Right, 'cause
Right.
it's not a
I think
major
it's
league
insurance
contract.
policy.
Yeah.
Yeah, because maybe they go through 2 weeks of camp and they're like, these two guys, Jackson and Martin, that we got, they're not ready. I mean,
Yeah.
we see promise in them, but they're probably not ready yet. Of course, they're Major League Rule 5 draft guys,
Right.
so
So you
they
can't-
would
you
have
gotta-
to keep them. But in essence, they could let one or two go. I mean, last year, the 3 Rule 5 guys is only one of them still in the system? Or I'm trying to think,
was
because Nestor
Santander
Cortez
Well,
went back.
because last year Santander was a hangover.
That's right. So 2 are
he's
still in the system because
and Araujo,
is still, yeah.
He's got to be up for what, like 7 games or something?
Yeah.
How can you have a last name? And this is broadcaster speak right here. This is broadcaster dork speak. But this is amazing to me. You have like a 6-letter last name, and it's 4 syllables long. Araujo. It's Araujo. That's amazing.
And that's why I could never be a broadcaster, is the names.
Well, that's
I'm-
the only
that's
reason,
it. That's
but
the
that's one
only
of
reason.
them.
That's the
broadcasting.
number one reason.
I'm broadcasting with Mount St. Mary's about 4 or 5 years ago, and we're playing Villanova, and it's the first game of the year. And I walk up to the Villanova broadcaster, and I show him this 15-letter last name, and I say, "Please tell me he's not going to play." Because I've looked at how you say his name, and I can't say it.
Give me a nickname here.
Right.
And he
This guy's
goes,
nickname.
Adam, he's going to play, and he's going to play a lot. And he was Archie Diacono,
Oh, yeah.
the guy who
Diacono.
became a star for Villanova
Yeah.
in their championship team.
That's funny.
I
Yeah.
practiced it for 10 minutes.
Of course.
Is there any truth? I don't know if this is true, Adam, but there's rumors coming out that the reason we didn't sign any international free agents is because Adam Pohl was concerned about the pronunciations of some of the names that we would sign for international free agents.
100%.
So he said, no more international free
I
agents.
sent a very detailed email to Elias and let him know that I can't roll my R's.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm out.
Yeah.
See, I thought it was
That's-
like whatever.
that's
What's the
why-
guy's name? Like
right.
Shang Chu from China. I thought that was you
Right.
drew
Oh,
the line
yeah.
there.
That's why
Yes.
Joe Angel retired.
That's
We announced international.
No, that was his.
That was his thing.
That was his thing
Yeah,
of pronouncing
that's-
those
yeah.
those
What
last
was that?
names. He
I
could-
like it, Bert.
He could roll his R's. He could
He
roll
could
his
roll
R's
his
with
R's
the best
big
of
time.
them. Yeah. I got a couple other questions about. If we kind of look ahead, I think
Sure.
this is going to be an interesting year. I think like the open competition. I was surprised. Like Fangraphs had our top prospects, and they have like ETAs, right?
Mhm.
And the ETA for a lot of these guys, like the ETA for Mountcastle was 2019.
sure.
Do you see that as a realistic possibility? That he could be
Undoubtedly.
here? Really?
Yeah. I think that this notion, well, first of all, everything in the lens of the Orioles GM and the Orioles brass right now is a long-term viewpoint. So if they feel that bringing a guy up to the major leagues and giving him a taste of the major leagues, even though he might not be as productive this moment as, let's say, a Mark Trumbo, but they feel like that's going to be the benefit of that player long-term, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
You see, I think a lot of Oriole fans are frustrated. They're like, oh my God, we've only signed Nate Carnes or whatever. But the reality of it is that they have, once again, a lot of players that could be big league players, and almost all of them are in Double and Triple A. This is going to be my 13th year broadcasting games in the Oriole minor leagues, and there's never been this many players close to the major leagues
Wow.
in the Orioles system in my time. But once again, there's no Manny Machado in the system,
Yeah.
and there's no prospect like Matt Wieters in the system right now. So you put all that stuff together, and I think that they want to leave spots open and give players opportunities. So when you're looking at the AAA starting rotation right now of Keegan Aiken and Dylan Tate and Luis Ortiz, and all these types of players, it wouldn't be a surprise at all if they're in the major leagues. It wouldn't be a surprise to me if Michael Givens gets traded midseason,
Right.
and all of a sudden the back end of the Orioles bullpen are guys that have never pitched in the major leagues before, like Zach Pop and Brandon Klein. So I think that it's great to be a minor leaguer in the Orioles organization. And these guys are going to get a real chance. And once again, I think that's also going to be exciting for Oriole fans because you're seeing the future. And whether it works out or not, you're not going to cry tears over a loss in late April, knowing that the Orioles are more than likely not destined. And the other aspect of this is if Oriole pitchers, Cobb, Cashner, or Bundy, if they're doing extremely well, they might be gone.
Right.
Right.
And that would be a good thing.
Right. So the reality of it is, the Orioles could be a much better team this year if everything breaks right. There's no doubt about it. But in a way, what they're doing is every decision they make is about 2021 or 2022 in every way, shape, or form. And that's why I thought the Mountcastle move today was so interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned the Dylan Tate and Luis Ortiz. Looking at the Bakota projections, they're both projected to have a couple starts in the majors this year.
Yeah.
I was surprised Bakota didn't have any starts projected for Keegan Aiken. Out of those guys, I think Keegan Aiken had the better year of those guys last year at Bowie. What are your thoughts on Keegan Aiken? He's a guy that seems to be, I don't know, was it injuries or just not being able to figure it out? But last year he seemed to kind of put it together a little bit more, right?
Yeah, there's no doubt that he had a big hiccup in his 2017 in Frederick. But, in that season he also had stretches in which he was outstanding. And in Bowie he put it all together. He had the second most wins for a Baysox pitcher ever. Yeah. And I know people say wins don't matter, but I don't believe that. So the reality of it is that he was going out with a sub-500 team. And, there were times where he was the Steve Carlton of the Baysox last year, meaning there were 4 starters and you knew that the Baysox were most likely going to lose. And then it was Keegan Aiken day. And it's like, all right, we get to win today. Yay, it's Keegan Aiken day. Aiken he kind of hit a wall at the end. I think he was completely worn down. His last 2 starts were very poor. His ERA went from 2.7 to 3.2, 3.3 because of really struggling in his last 2 starts. But the reality of it is that he nearly won the pitching triple crown in the Eastern League. And that is that's the number one prospect level in baseball.
Yeah.
Meaning wins, ERA, strikeouts. He was right there. And so I'm a believer. The crazy thing about him is I think there's 2 ways to pitch. There's either this is what I have, come hit it, or I'm going to try to fool you. And for Keegan Aiken, he is the kind of guy, and I think these guys work out better in the major leagues, where you know what he's throwing and it doesn't matter. Yeah. He has got an invisible fastball. He throws at 91 to 94 miles an hour, which is average. But the reality of it is it plays like a much harder, faster fastball. And he'll give up a 420-foot home run, and then the next batter comes up, and he throws 4 straight fastballs, and he strikes him out on a 1-2 pitch. I bet, the percentage of fastballs in the major leagues, that's another aspect of the game that have led to more strikeouts, have really gone down.
Right.
Some teams are throwing less than half their pitches are fastballs.
Sure.
Keegan Aiken probably throws 70 to 80% fastballs. He's not messing around.
Right.
He's not up there like, oh, let me get you off balance. He's like, come and hit it. Yeah. So it's impressive to see because you also see the fact that he could probably develop his off-speed regime more, and his fastball's success could lead with future growth to being an outstanding starter.
Right, because that's something we would see with the previous regime is they would say, well, you need a third pitch.
Sure.
So it'll be interesting if they say, hey, you're good at throwing the fastball, that's your pitch. Go with what works for you, or if
I would imagine they would encourage him, to throw more secondary pitches a lot more than.
I think they will too. Yeah. I think once again they're going to want him to throw that fastball up even more and more, and he does that a lot. He just gets a ton of swings and misses off his fastball.
There's been some chatter around this, and I think it's highly possible with not having a 4th or 5th starter that we could go the Tampa Bay route, the opener route.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
But the Baysox are doing this, I think, even maybe for the Rays with Tanner Scott, right? You had Tanner
That's
Scott
right.
as your
Yeah,
opener.
I didn't even think about that. But you're right. Jesus Lorenzo, who probably will be in the major leagues for the Pirates this year, is the same.
Now, you guys did it more for innings reasons, right?
No, actually, it wasn't to be the opener, but in effect it was. They wanted a guy like Tanner Scott who didn't have a great feel for pitching but had an incredible arm, who was one of the most bizarre pitchers I've ever seen in my life in this regard. He literally allowed more runs than hits in his full season in Bowie.
Oh, that's weird.
How can that happen?
Yeah.
I mean, I've never seen somebody.
Right.
With a lot of walks. Right.
He still had an ERA in the 2s, but guys were hitting like 150 against him, which is just absurd. But he was walking, more than a batter an inning, and therefore, or actually, it was less than that. He was just under a batter an inning. And in effect, you had a season where, he gave up, let's say, 45 walks and 65 or 45 hits, 65 walks, and about 50 runs. So it was very, very unique. But Tanner Scott, they thought, especially even in developing his slider, which is a real weapon, that throwing him in 3-inning outings was going to be advantageous. So that's what he did, and he really pitched well.
Yeah.
But he's going to have to continue. He's taken a step forward. He needs to take another step forward to be a good major league pitcher. He just doesn't throw enough strikes.
Yeah. And Pacoda, by the way, has been projected to be the Orioles' best bullpen, ERA-wise, to be the Orioles' best bullpen.
That'd be
guy,
that'd be a big step up.
That would be.
Yeah. Bert, what are your thoughts on the Orioles going to an opener? Having a bullpen guy come in and throw the first 2 innings of a game, beginning of a game, and then bringing in the starter.
The opener is the other thing that some players this past couple of weeks have been talking about, especially starting pitchers saying how they hate the opener.
Well, I loved
Madison
Bumgarner. That's just, and he is one of the greatest pitchers out there,
Right.
so he has the right to say that.
Yeah.
But that's a great response. I just leave the stadium.
Right.
I love that. If you put an opener for my game, I will
Right.
leave. Just walk out.
I've got a guess for the Orioles' preferred opener.
Oh yeah,
Jimmy Yacobonis.
oh.
I think Yacobonis could be an opener.
Yeah,
Or
because he's done both start and
Now-
relief,
right.
right? He's done both.
Or maybe
ways.
Castro.
Now, right, or even Givens if you want to show him off to try to trade him more.
Right.
What would be the reason for the Orioles to use an opener? Would it be to try to give more guys chances and build up their arms? Why would you go with an opener if you were the Orioles?
Well, I think Brandon Hyde would go with the opener
to see more guys, or
to win to try to win the game, right? Like Brandon Hyde would say, because he's not.
that
Don't
we
tell
don't-
him
right.
5 years.
You're
Don't
not
tell Brandon
saying-
Hyde 5 years. Brandon Hyde's trying to say, I'm competing, right?
well, yeah,
Right.
'cause
And he's going to try to set up the and when your options are, okay, am I going to start Josh Rogers or David Hess or John Means? No offense to those guys,
Right.
Or if I can just go with like 2 innings from each of these guys, maybe I can cobble together something.
Yeah, but I don't think Brandon Hyde can make that decision.
Why?
I
Is he
feel like
not the manager?
I feel like
Oh, you think he's a puppet?
I think that's got to be an organizational decision on
to
how
have
you
an
use
opener?
him.
It'll be
Is Brandon
interesting.
Hyde doing his own lineups?
I don't know, because I see what you're saying, because Brandon Hyde can't worry about 3 years from now because the Orioles might decide, hey, in 3 years we're going to get a real manager.
But I don't
who's
think you're
been here.
doing this.
But
And I don't think you're treating this, and maybe I'm wrong here, but I don't think you're treating this like Tanner Scott, where you're in the development business
you're just
at
saying,
the major leagues.
I've got
I
guys
think
who
you're trying
can't
to
pitch
win.
6 innings, but I've got 3 guys that can pitch 3 innings.
Right. These guys are not good enough to get through the lineup multiple times.
Then why
So
are they in the major leagues? If that's the future
Because
starter,
this is the best we got.
or is that what you're saying? This is just the best, and how
Right,
we use
they
the
might-
pen?
they might
Until
say-
we develop
The problem with an opener is that you're then leaning heavier on your first 4 starters.
Well, the other problem with the opener is you're asking like 4 or 5 guys to be successful out there, and I don't
Right.
know if we have 4 or 5 bullpen guys who are ready to
Yeah.
be successful. Like Tampa Bay, I think had more.
But like
arms,
you can't do
quality arms to do
openers
that.
for 5 games in a row.
Right.
Correct, yeah.
Openers is like a term now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
You got
like
the closer.
well.
But no, the interesting thing is the
But
closer is
that's
going
different
away.
from the starter.
Well, remember
Yes.
last year we were calling it piggybacking.
You were. I don't know anyone
We
else was.
we talked about it multiple times as piggybacking before
Okay.
the term opener became like this thing.
Who's he
in baseball.
piggybacking?
Well, because one guy
Piggybacking was
piggybacks
one guy starts, then the next guy, then the next
Right,
guy.
right.
I call
That's
it-
a minor league term, yeah.
Yeah, I call it the pyramid scheme, but to each their own.
No, that's like that's what your wife does, and my wife, and whoever's like all the
No, my wife is
women
not.
stuff.
My wife is not involved in that.
Mandy's doing.
Speaking
some
of which,
type
your phone's
pyramid
ringing. Just kidding.
Right.
Just
Oh,
kidding.
don't do that to me! Don't do that. Not funny.
You got nervous there.
I
A
did.
little jumpy.
You got to put on that alert siren.
Yeah. Everyone should be alerted when something happens. Alert everyone in this house.
Yep.
When something happens. No, but I think it's going to be interesting to watch because if you look at the starter options, I just don't think there's very good options there. So I think it'd be interesting to see if they. But like Adam was saying, it's not like they lack prospect starters, right? Like
Right.
future starters that they're trying
Right.
to work into that.
Just
So they have
look
plenty of
at
options
who
to
the
put in there.
Orioles drafted in 16 and 17. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, you're looking at drafts in which of the first 20 picks, 17 or 18 of them were pitchers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's true. And now they're finally kind of making their way. And then the addition of all those trades, right? It seems
Right.
like in all those trades, we got Ortiz, we got Tate. You know, those guys came via the trade.
Right.
Kramer, yeah.
We talked one more.
Okay.
If you're done with the opener, I wanted to say
it's 8:50, Jerry. We got to wrap the show up
it's
at
been
some
a really
point.
long show, but
Yeah.
a couple weeks ago we were talking about the changes that baseball is proposing.
Okay.
All this stuff starts in the minors, so I
Yeah.
think it's important to talk about if there's any changes going into the minors this year.
Okay. Or even the effects you saw last year of minor league things.
Of like the clock and
The
stuff.
pitch clock. That,
Yeah.
that could have an impact.
The pitch
on
clock,
the majors.
you would expect that, that it's a big deal. Like it's like New Year's Eve every time the guy touches the rubber.
Yeah.
But
Does like the whole crowd start to count down?
the Royal Rumble. But the reality
And
is,
then I love because this is like the shot clock in
But
college
I do
basketball.
like-
when you play the away game,
And
you can
yeah.
start counting down when they got like
Right.
10 seconds left, 2,
Oh,
1, and make them throw
I
early.
love the idea of
Some
messing
mind games there.
messing with the opponent pitching like that with counting down since the whole stadium gets to see the clock. I like that.
yeah, I just it really does not play
Has-
a major role in the games.
Right.
I mean,
Because pitchers don't usually take that long to really like. That's plenty of
well,
time for them
they
to
just
pitch.
get used to it. They get
Yeah,
used to
okay.
it. The other aspect is that it really makes it especially pertaining to how much time is between innings.
Yeah.
In the minor leagues, we do a lot of funky games and exciting things between innings.
Right,
and
the
now
cowboy
it's,
rodeo.
Right now, it's like okay, it has to be 90 seconds and you're off, and there's a clock for that too. And in essence, the first year that it was implemented on average throughout the minor leagues, which was double in AAA, but in those 60 ballparks, games were down 8 minutes. And, that's only 8 minutes. But the reality is that if you watch a baseball game that's 2 hours 30, 2 hours 40 minutes, it feels right. And when the average game is 3 hours and 10 minutes, it's just going on forever.
Right.
Yeah.
And the ability for these pitchers in the off season to just stand there for a minute between pitches, I mean, it's agonizing. So
Yeah.
I think it is very important in baseball. The other thing I think that will come in the major leagues is I think they're going to make the between inning length shorter and put more ads on TV on your screens.
Yeah.
Well, like we're
That's
seeing the
what-
NFL do.
Yeah, we've been talking about
Exactly.
that before. Like that's the way to do it. Like why even go to commercial?
Right.
Why not have the whole commercial break be just on the side as the pitcher warms up?
Or
Right.
like the NBA that showed off their jerseys that can change mid-game, the future jerseys. You didn't see this?
no,
During the
No.
All-Star game, they were showing off these. This is what our jerseys could be in 2021 or something. And the guy presses a button on his phone, and the jersey number and name changes. And
Right, so
everyone
an
says, well,
ad could
that's
change on your-
useless, which it is. But the whole point is advertising.
Right. And I saw it, I think, first in the Ryder Cup last year. Like here's 30 seconds and you can still see what's happening.
Yeah, it makes sense because
but-
it keeps people from leaving, right?
And
walking
baseball's
away and-
baseball's learned to do it with the ad behind home plate changing.
Sure.
You see it a little bit on Baseball Tonight when they go to the overhead shot and there's a logo on the outfield.
Of course.
So you can work it into baseball.
And I even heard about professional players saying, like, umps telling them, "Hey, slow down on your warm ups. We got like 90 seconds." Like, I think
Undoubtedly.
players
Right.
Yeah.
can warm up in a much quicker fashion than
Yeah,
It's
sure.
about commercials, right? Advertising.
It's all about it's like football where the guy goes out with the big orange glove. It's all about the commercial break. And
My
you gotta
favorite
fix it.
story about this was from the 80s, and Lee Smith, Hall of Famer now, a former Oriole, when he was with the Cubs, he became really good friends with the grounds crew. And the grounds crew got paid by the hour. And in essence, they got an overtime bonus if the game went longer than 3 hours, and the average game was close to that. So Lee Smith took by far the longest of any pitcher in the history of baseball to get to the mound, and it just became his thing. So when he pitched for the Orioles at the end of his career, I think that was in 1994. You'd come back from the break, and Lee would be picking up the ball to make his first of 8, pitches, because that was his thing. I mean, he wasn't burning any calories coming in from the booth, or coming in from the pen. That is.
Well, that's why they now have bullpen carts.
Yes.
Save
Yeah.
a few extra seconds. At Double A, did they institute yet the extra innings, guy starting on
Yes.
second base?
Yeah.
How was that taken?
Weird. I mean, it was very strange. It's funny because the Baysox were great at it. I think we have to give a lot of props to our manager, Gary Kendall. But I think Bowie was something like 8-1 in extra inning games last. It was something like of that nature for a team that was a below 500 team. But it was unusual. The thing that it did was, and this will never happen in the major leagues, right? But in essence, what they're trying to do is save money for organizations in transferring players. Because what would happen is you'd play 15 innings, and then Double-A would say, look, we don't have any relievers for tomorrow.
Right.
So then Frederick
Fresh,
would send up 2 relievers to Bowie and Delmarva 2, and it would cost all these money and travel. So there were something like 140 games in the minors in 2017 that went more than 12 innings, and last year there was like 10. So it was a big difference.
Solved the problem.
I was actually able, world famous, to broadcast the first ever game.
Oh, wow.
Bowie
were
the only East Coast minor league team that went to extra innings on opening night.
Wow. Oh, nice.
So we got to do the first. So in essence, though, for general managers, my GM Brian Shallcross says, I think it's the dumbest rule ever, but I love it.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is a good example. July 4th, people come for the fireworks, right?
Sure.
And so here it is. The game's on the line. The Baysox are down 1, and what do? We get the tying hit, and then we strand the winning run at third, and we go to extras. And the reality is that people are there to watch fireworks, and now everybody's like, "Oh my God, how long is this game going to go?" The Baysox end up winning it, 15 minutes later in the bottom of the 10th. But if that game went 16 or 17 innings, and we couldn't shoot off fireworks because it was too late, it would have been a disaster.
Wow.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, first off, why are minor league players not playing under the fireworks yet? It seems like the perfect promotion for minor league baseball.
I love it. Yeah,
but how do they choose who goes out to second base? Does the manager get to choose, or is it last out? How do they put the guy out there?
It's when the out is made, it is the last player that batted in the inning prior.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
you don't get to choose.
Right.
I would like the other managers should be able to choose. I think that would be interesting.
But
like
you can make a substitution, So that's something like Gary did it at times,
Sure.
Our catcher would be the guy that made the last out, and then he would run out to second, and Gary would pinch run for the catcher.
Interesting, yeah.
And then the other thing is, do you play, like if you're the home team, everybody plays for the big inning at first, but you could get out of a jam. Now you need only 1 run, and literally I saw it once or twice last year where it's like, you don't allow a run in the top of the 10th. You just bunt the guy to third and then hit a sac fly and the game's over.
Sure.
Like you could win without a hit.
Yeah.
Also, that run that would score, this is a statistical thing, but that is an unearned run.
So it doesn't hurt the pitcher for
Even
having
the
a guy
base
on there. Right. Gotcha.
Yeah.
But the runner still gets a run scored. Like he still gets that in his
Correct,
Right.
he does, yeah.
Good for him.
So it's like an error.
What if the guy is a 2-run homer? The 1 earned run?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Makes sense.
All right. Are there any new things that are coming this year?
Not really rules related.
Nothing that's going to shift.
But
Nothing as fun as putting a guy on second base.
But I'm telling you, for the Orioles, I'm very, very interested to see analytically how the Orioles minor league staffs go after this, because like for instance in Bowie, our pitching coach Kenny Steenstra is a longtime Orioles minor league pitching coach. Keith Bodie is a longtime hitting coach that's been around forever. We have a young manager, but he was in the Orioles organization prior, Buck Britton. It's not like it was all new people.
Yeah, that's
were
what
brought
surprised a lot of the same managers.
In effect, we're going to have to see this relation and this adaptation at every level of the organization. The Orioles, I know that many people have read, they've brought in some junior collegiate coaches, some coaches from places that in the past would never be.
Yeah, junior college,
that are local, that have really heeded to this, and they've put them, and that's not a surprise to me at all, at the lowest levels in the minors. You might say that that's the most insignificant, but it's the opposite. Because what they want to do is when they draft these new players, they want people that are thinking like them teaching these players. They want to instill that in right away when they're at Aberdeen. They don't want to try to teach a guy or have somebody that believes in what they're doing when they get to Bowie.
Yeah, I'm not explaining very much to Mark Trumbo.
Yeah, but it is. If I remember, we sat down with DJ Stewart last year. And I think, Matt, you asked him some question about strikeout rate or something, and his answer was almost exactly like Chris Davis's answer to us earlier in the year, that I'm paid to swing away. They want me to be more aggressive.
More aggressive.
To be more aggressive when we're
not
like,
being
wait,
aggressive
shouldn't you be less aggressive?
Well, but here's the thing.
2 years ago, yeah.
This is the thing. Like, I think about players that are in the upper levels of the minors that fit the mantra and what they're looking for. When Elias and Maydol, when they went to Houston, one of the first things they did was they actually took batting average off the scoreboard when you went to games at Minute Maid Park.
That's
because
really
they
funny.
don't care about it at all.
And they didn't want their fans or players to care about it either.
They
yeah.
put OPS, up there, or on base percent,
Right.
one or the other.
Yeah.
And the fans were like outraged, like, "What's this
Right.
guy hitting? I want to know what he's hitting."
Yeah, I would too.
But they didn't want their players to go up there and go, "God, I'm hitting." Like what
Right,
I talked about with McKenna earlier. Like the fact that he's hitting 230 doesn't matter to them. He's got
Right.
a 340 on base
Right.
percentage, right?
The
and they
auto
care
walks
about
hit,
the OPS, So. So when you put this all together, I think DJ Stewart fits that mantra because DJ is a guy that walks a lot. He's always been a high on base percentage player in the minors once he straightened out his batting stance so that he could actually get to a league average fastball. I think that in college, you see a lot of guys that throw in the high 80s,
Right.
and Stewart was crushing them, and with this crouch swing, and he had to straighten up because basically he couldn't get to 92 or 93 with any consistency.
Because he's only 2 feet by when he's crouched
Exactly.
down.
So now that's really changed, and I think that he's a guy that is because he was a disappointment immediately that people don't think about, but I love his work ethic. He plays baseball like he's playing football, which makes him look awkward in the outfield, but he catches everything because he's just sprinting all around and then he just stops and the ball comes to him. But, I mean, the reality, he's not a graceful player. Let me put it that way, where Cedric Mullins is like so graceful in the outfield.
Right.
But DJ Stewart really fits this profile because when you look at guys like Mullins and Hayes, they don't walk a lot. Mountcastle doesn't walk a lot, but DJ Stewart does. And that's probably why he said that last year because he was probably taking a lot of strike threes.
Yeah, it's true. And we appreciate you helped us get the opportunity to interview a couple people, including Tanner Scott. I told Scott, I said, Scott, because you walk a lot of guys and the pace of play is concerned. I told, since you walk about one every 3 players, get the first 2 out. Tell the third guy to just go to first base, so you save everyone a lot of time, and you're going to walk the guy anyway. Just kind of pace the play, solving all problems. But it's going to be really fun this year to see a lot of those guys.
Well, this is the year to go watch minor league baseball.
Well,
Right,
and the majors because Tanner Scott's going to be in the
True.
majors this year.
You're
And
right.
DJ Stewart, I hope, is going to be in the majors this year
At some point.
And so at all levels, I think this is kind of a really exciting season because you don't have a bunch of veterans playing for the Orioles or Norfolk or Bowie. Like there's young players everywhere.
Sure.
And so it's kind of I think a really exciting season in a lot of respects.
And also pitcher, the pitcher is, like I talked about before, the most important player in baseball. Whoever that night's pitcher is.
Right.
The thing that makes baseball so interesting, more interesting in some ways than football, is that in football, the pitcher is the quarterback, and the quarterback's the same every game.
Yeah.
Where, if Clayton Kershaw pitched 100% of the Dodgers' innings, they wouldn't lose many games, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's what makes baseball so unique. And let's just look at Bowie. I mean, Dean Kramer, if he starts in Bowie. Then you've got Zimmerman, who was traded for in the Braves deal. Then you've got the 2 top draft choices from a few years ago that have had great starts to their minor league careers, Zach Lowther and Michael Baumann. Alex Wells is a former minor league pitcher of the year that a lot of people think remind them of Zach Davies.
They have the best control in the organization, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then that still is without a guy like Christian Alvarado, who's been a longtime starter in the system and been a double-digit game winner.
What happened
and
to
then
Cody
Brian
Sedlock?
Gonzalez.
Is Cody Sedlock still alive? What happened to him?
Well, that's the thing. He's a first-round pick. Can he reclaim his velocity? He did not have
Is that
it.
what happened? He just lost his velocity?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
do we know it just was gone? Do we know injuries? Do we know?
Well, he
what
did
happened?
have some injuries, but it's not something that he had to have major surgery
Yeah.
on. But whether it's mechanical, whatever it is, I mean,
Yeah.
he was a guy that was throwing 95, and then he's a guy that's throwing 85 to 88. So that's a whole thing. Can he get that velocity
And that's
back?
why you need so many pitching prospects, right? Because that kind of stuff does happen.
It happens.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We saw Matt Hobgood. That's what happened to Hobgood.
Yeah. All right. Well, Adam, we could talk to you all night. Shoot, we almost did. Some pace of play concerns on this podcast right now.
Pace of podcast.
Pace of podcast concerns. Let's do some kind of podcast clock. All right, but boys and girls, appreciate you listening. If you don't follow Adam Pohl on Twitter, you should follow him on Twitter. How can they follow you on Twitter, Adam?
Well, I wasn't quick enough to have at Adam Pohl, so I'm at Pohl, P-O-H-L, Adam.
Okay.
How about that?
So pull out and switch it up. I like that. Switching up.
And if you take a look at any of our Twitters, it's all, we tweeted it out there. We all follow.
Yeah.
you
So
can
if
get
you
to it that
follow one
way.
of us, you should follow all of us.
Yes.
Or
That's
it's
our
in the show notes as well.
Yeah. All right. You can go ahead and subscribe on iTunes if you don't already. Leave a 5-star review.
Yeah.
Any other announcements I should be saying here at the end?
I mean, now we're on YouTube, Periscope,
yeah.
Facebook, Twitch. Twitch is new. That was just added. Did I say YouTube?
Yeah.
We're on all those things.
Tinder, Grindr, yeah.
Whichever
You
one of
covered
those you like, just type in Section
Swipe
336
right.
and make sure you like us. If you like us on Twitch, you get a cool custom notification every time we go live.
Oh, I might follow you on Twitch
What
now.
is
Yeah.
Twitch?
It's
I've never even heard of that.
It's a video streaming thing. I was laughing during the earlier in the show. I was checking on Twitter, make sure no breaking news or anything, and I saw Ronnie Stanley of the Ravens is playing some video game live on Twitch tonight. So,
all right,
it's, like
is
the
he costing
millennials-
us some listeners?
Yeah, apparently you might be watching Ronnie Stanley play Apex instead of watching us.
Okay.
Don't watch
But-
Ronnie Stanley. Watch Section
Right.
336.
Twitch is a lot of video game streaming, but they're getting into podcasting, and they want
Interesting.
podcasters
All right.
to sign on to Twitch. They got a really nice interface and platform, so I signed us up, and our video is now going there as well.
I'm going to
Why
check it
not?
out. I like it.
All right. Well,
you can watch Fortnite at the same time.
You can follow the show on Twitter, Section 336 Show. You can follow me on Twitter, Section 336. You can follow Bert.
At Bert
You
Rohde.
can follow Josh.
At Josh Soroka.
Thanks for listening, boys and girls. And as always, go O's.
Thank you for listening to the Section 336 podcast. Please go to iTunes and Facebook for all complaints or the occasional compliment. If I were you, I would not take any baseball advice from these guys. Josh and Matt were raised by an Orioles-obsessed father, and Bert fell in love with Don Mattingly. He has a thing for mustaches.